Good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the second meeting of the AI Ad-Hoc Subcommittee. It's great to see so many of you here. And those joining us virtually, we have a lot of people who are calling in, who are tracking this. I also want to just briefly say, we have all the meetings on the web, on my county website, and we're going to post up there where you can go to get it, but if you Google it, it'll take you right there. As we continue to explore how artificial intelligence can shape the future of our county. As we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to add a reminder to everyone about the county's AI engagement website, and I think that they're going to post that if it's not posted up now. Oh, I think it's right there. It's a great place to stay updated on our work and share your thoughts and ideas about AI and its role at the county. Your feedback is really important to us, so please use the site to ask questions, suggest ideas, even after today's meeting. We also have the video of the first meeting. This meeting and all subsequent meetings will be listed up there so people can see what we've done and what's been discussed. During our first meeting, we laid the foundation by discussing the fundamentals of AI and its role in governance. I heard insightful presentations on how the growing use of AI across industry, including its potential to enhance public services. We also learned from OpenAI and NACO about AI tools, challenges, and the emerging potential of AI and its innovation. Our Chief Information Officer shared how the county plans to integrate AI into county operations and highlighted the future opportunities for the innovation. Today, we're building on those discussions by focusing on 3 critical areas: how we can leverage AI tools like those used in the city of San Jose to enhance governance in public communications, the workforce implications of AI, both the challenges and opportunities it presents for workers and organizations, a deep dive into the county's IT infrastructure and how we can ensure it's ready for the future use of AI. The insights shared today will help us identify actionable items to responsibly and effectively integrate AI into the county's operations. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce the first set of speakers. To begin, we'll hear from Jerry Rutner, representing the GovAI Coalition in the city of San Jose. Jerry will share how AI tools are being deployed to support governance, compliance, in public communication initiatives. These examples will offer valuable lessons for how we might enhance our own county operations. I'd like to turn it over to our speaker, and I think that she's coming through on the Y.
All right, so thank you very much for that introduction. Hopefully everybody can see the screen. And first, I'd like to introduce myself. So my name is Jerry Rutner. I am excited to be here to present some of the materials that we have in front of you. I am from the city of San Jose as an assistant to the city manager and also a GovAI Coalition founding member. So I'd like to think that what we will be sharing with you all today are an overview of a lot of the work that we've done as part of the GovAI Coalition. So that's going to be sort of the first part of the presentation. The second part of the presentation is going to be focused on highlighting some of the initiatives the city of San Jose has supported in the space of AI. And the last part, if we even have time to get to it, are some potential opportunities for the County of San Diego to leverage AI. Something I also wanted to share was that County of San Diego is near and dear to my heart. I did work there for several years, started as an eligibility worker at food stamps, and left about a year ago or so having worked and had the privilege to work with our behavioral health services department. So I like to think that I'm relatively uniquely positioned to help offer some insight about how tools can be leveraged specifically within Health and Human Services branch. So I wanted to share, I have a lot of materials to go through. There's about 43 slides. I suspect that I'll be shifting through them very quickly. Don't worry. These materials are easy to share with you all if you want to take a look at the PowerPoint afterward to reference. And we also have PowerPoint that are from wearing the sort of City of San Jose hat, that we had a city council session that is also publicly available. So if there's any materials that you feel are interesting or you'd like to have access to afterward, please feel free to let us know. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in, starting with an overview of our GovAI Coalition. So for folks that haven't been part of our monthly meetings, really the way this started was just a group of folks that said, there's a lot of stuff happening in AI. What are we going to do to be proactive in first understanding it and then working with what I would describe as the collective intelligence or knowledge of all our governmental practitioners across the nation that may be finding themselves in a similar position. And so the mission of the GovAI Coalition that was founded a little over a year ago was to empower public sector entities to harness the potential of AI for use in public good. And I will share that our coalition has grown quite extensively to about 1,500 members or so, representing about 500 local, state, and federal agencies. I'm going to go ahead and shift over to the next slide. So part of what I'm doing too is just offering to you all, if folks have an interest in participating in any one of the work groups or committees that you see on the screen, just note that we have several current work groups in place. We are currently working to sort of reassess moving forward. We need to reshape some of these work groups. There is a QR code if folks would like to sign up. You're welcome to sign up. But this is just to give you a sense of some of the things that our teams and our many practitioners across the nation are focusing on when it comes to thinking about how to use AI responsibly. Giving you a little bit more information of some of the thinking that our GovAI Coalition membership has done. So we've gone through several phases. We're currently in phase 3. A lot of what we've done is outlined in the slide. In summary, what we managed to do was pull together folks that really helped set up some templates that we could then package and share with other governmental agencies. A lot of the materials we saw would either work really well at a federal level, would work really well for private organizations, but what we did see was a need for folks in local government, cities, counties, to put together templates that we could use. Really all of it in an effort to ensure that we're sending sort of consistent messaging to our private partners as well. And so having some form of standards was very important to our coalition board and members, something we could create and disseminate afterwards. So going very quickly, currently in phase 3, where we're exploring more use cases. Part of phase 1 was really the creation of a lot of documents focused on governance. Phase 2 was really disseminating some of those materials, building out a vendor registry. I'll share a little bit more about those details in the next slides. Part of those sort of package of deliverables was a set of templates. And so the way we branded this is, what are tools that governmental agencies need to go from 0 to 90, to go from thinking about the use of AI, contemplating how to use, how to govern, how to set up use cases, over to actually testing and using use cases. And so there's a suite of deliverables and templates that our team put together. This is really just like a little bit of a taster of what some of those materials are. We were really mindful to ensure that when we were packaging documents and materials that we were thinking of our audience. So not just governmental agency, but who within the local agency would really need some of these materials. So some of these documents are focused or targeted toward procurement officers. Some of it's for folks if they did have the position of chief AI officer. And it's really meant to try and standardize what we are setting as expectations to our provider network or our private sector partners on what are the things that we as local governmental agencies need in terms of information about the product that they're sharing out or selling. What are some standard terms and conditions we'd like to place into some of the agreements, since governmental agencies generally contract for these things. What are some important clauses or language we want to include as part of our AI policy, as an example? Some other deliverables our coalition put together, again, informed by our very broad network and other governmental practitioners, our buyer's guide, how to measure the performance around AI. And a lot of these documents and materials for folks, there's also another QR code on the screen. If you would like to take a look in more detail at some of these deliverables, please feel free to scan the code. There are several materials or documents you can review, as well as the folks within your agency that would be most interested in some of those documents. So really, it just depends on who you're speaking to. what things are most important to them, and how can we provide them with that information in order for them to be able to move some of this work forward. I want to share just a little bit of a plug in terms of what the coalition membership is currently doing, sort of exploring moving forward. So we've been talking a lot about governance, talking a lot about different things that we can do using AI, but we've noticed that there's a demand and need for specific to sectors. So as it will, if I think about the county, land use environmental group as an example, may have different needs in health and human services than maybe your public safety group folks or FG3. And so drilling down into what particular use cases, templates, tools, or materials would be helpful for folks that have a very specific sort of goal in mind or that may be different than other sectors. So that's a really quick overview of some of the things that we put together as a GovAI coalition. Again, please feel free to reach out or scan the materials. There's a whole set of these materials on our website that we've made publicly available, again, shaped by our many committees and our members. I'm going to go ahead and shift into explaining some of the City of San Jose initiatives currently underway. But maybe a little before that, I just wanted to share, we managed to pull together some materials that we feel and hope are either inspirational or can show the potential of how tools can be leveraged. One thing I think is very important to acknowledge is that City of San Jose is what we would call the capital, the Silicon Valley, capital of Silicon Valley. And so because of that, we have lots of partners in the area. And so naturally, there's an interest to, as the City of San Jose, we want to try to be innovative. We want to try to integrate these tools in the way we do business. And so there is a little bit of pressure in that regard. And so I wanted to highlight that a lot of the materials that I'm going to go through were really heavily shaped by the many private sector partners that we have in the area and have been really inspired by a lot of these partnerships. So I just wanted to acknowledge we do feel a little bit of pressure to be able to sort of articulate how are the ways in which AI can be leveraged. And we're offering some of those examples here. As the sort of capital of Silicon Valley, our GovAI Coalition City of San Jose hosted a summit. And so that's another thing I wanted to share. A lot of what we're sharing is, again, information that we've learned from people that showed up to our GovAI Coalition Summit and shared some of these use cases. So we've received a lot of inspiration from, again, the many brilliant practitioners across the nation. There's so many different examples, different use cases in which we're learning and observing. And so I'm sharing with you all an excellent opportunity to connect to a community practice via the GovAI Coalition to help shape some of the work as you're thinking about how the County of San Diego wants to approach it. So before I start getting into some of the use cases, I think it's important to highlight that when we're speaking to government, I wanted to offer some tools that we have found is very helpful when speaking with local governmental agencies, whether you be a city or a county, when you have 7,000 employees, or the county, I think a little over 20,000 employees. Like, what are some things that can help you think about how to activate a desire or energy focused on driving AI initiatives? And so there's a few tools I wanted to share. I think it's very important. What we noticed is really helpful when we're speaking of AI tools to think of government as a series of layers. We call it layers and players. And so there are tools that at the top layer, number 4, the public may be most interested in because they may want to get information quickly. Or as an example, the county on an enterprise level, there may be tools that can really help departments, either video technology or transcription. There are some AI tools that may work really well at an enterprise level, and there may be tools that work really well at a group level. So 4 groups that we articulated, and some that may not, be very effective at a group or enterprise level, but departments may have more of an interest to. So I'll share some specific use cases to make this a little clearer, but I think it's important to sort of acknowledge what level of government are we speaking to when we're talking about the development or potential use of AI in government. I also want to show one more slide. I think it's important to note there are some projects or AI use cases that are quite difficult and some that are quite simple. And so I would like to share that a lot of our members of our coalition, we have folks that are thinking high complexity, high value projects that require a lot of technical expertise, a lot of business operational knowledge. And some folks, quite honestly, the majority, who are just like, I just want to use ChatGPT to help me write a memo, help me write an email or something. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that projects fall across a broad spectrum of complexity. And so I think it's important to take that into account when thinking about where do we want to start? Right? Do we want to start with something really complex that may be more costly, or something simple in an effort to activate that excitement and energy around the potential use of the tool? I also think it's very important to think about an organization holistically, in the sense that there are many different service sectors, and even within those service sectors, many different departments that may be thinking about using AI in a different way, which means there's tons of opportunity, not just to develop specific tools for specific departments, but potential collaboration opportunities to create tools that may work for more than just one department. Now that I've provided a little bit of framing or ways in which you can look at or think about AI implementation, I wanted to share some of the use cases. Very excited to showcase a lot of the hard work our folks have been supporting around this. And so part of what I wanted to sort of do is make connections between what are tools at a public level that may be available to the public that can help share and disseminate information in a very sort of quick way. And so these are some examples that we have heard, either chatbots for public portals, voice assistants, real-time translation for public meetings. Some examples of that. When I sort of shared the slide before, I think one thing I forgot to mention that's very important is there's also a lot of education, upskilling, and training that needs to occur. And I think that's just as important as talking about the specific use cases. So at a public level, I wanted to share that our ITD department has been proactive in setting up education initiatives with the public. How AI 101, what are deepfakes, voice cloning scams, be aware of those and make sure that you're protecting yourself and learning more about what those things can look like, how to use ChatGPT. They've also set up some engagement sessions, very engaging sessions to help with the educational piece, because we do feel strongly that seeing is understanding. And you can speak to AI all day long, but until people actually use the tool, it's really difficult for folks to fully understand how it's used, how it can be used in its full potential. And so these are some efforts that are public-facing that our teams have engaged in. One particular use case that we're quite proud of is the use of AI for real-time language translation. So at City Hall, if you ever had a chance to visit us, which would be really neat, you'll notice there's a giant screen, and in that real-time translation in several languages. And so that is something that our folks built in an effort to provide better services in different languages to our community. So I wanted to offer up, these are, again, relatively low-hanging fruit examples of how AI can be used to serve the public. I wanted to go through a few enterprise level examples and share a little bit more information about what that potentially could look like. At an enterprise level, just think of it more or less as what is the county as a whole or the city as a whole doing to help support efforts around adoption or use of AI. And so there's many different products and tools that can be used. These are just some examples of using video conferencing or productivity tools like AI-enhanced meeting transcription. I know Zoom, Teams, other platforms offer this, and that could be used by not just one department, but essentially everyone within the county. There's ways to use for more complex use cases, centralizing data platforms where you could use it to develop predictive analytics. I would say that's probably more on the more complex, more difficult, requires more resourcing, but there is potential for that to be built at an enterprise level where folks would find it helpful. And to give some examples of what that would look like as an example, there are, I wanted to share a little bit more about our efforts at an enterprise level to help support some of the adoption. So a lot of what our team has done, our ITD department, has been to initiate an upskilling, right? So how do we give our folks the tools to be able to start to learn and use these things? How do you create a sandbox for them to learn how to use ChatGPT or other large language models? And so there is a collaboration or partnership with San Jose State University, which is right next door, that really helps us develop some of the materials, not just for our own folks, but share some of this information with our San Jose State University colleagues in an effort to build really good relationships to build up a workforce. So there's more to come, and I can share more on that, but I just wanted to highlight that partnership as being very important and key to this work. We've also been focusing a lot of work on data. So they go hand in hand. To have really good ability to do predictive analytics, we have really robust data governance. And so those are two specific efforts or initiatives that our folks focused on at an enterprise level to help speed up some of the adoption and understanding the linkages between data and AI. I wanted to go through some more specific group level potential examples. There are opportunities to use sort of collaboration chatbots within a particular group as an example. So I think about HHSA, where I used to be there. There may be policies specific to Health and Human Services Agency that you can potentially create a conversational agent with to look up specific things about HHSA policy you may not find, say, in public safety group. There's potential to train employees as well using AI technology. There's many different ways in which you could do this. So I won't be able to get through all the examples, but these are, again, just offering ideas in terms of how you can think about the use of AI. And some of our own, as an example, this is probably a good example, is some of our folks created some GPTs within a specific group focused on the creation of proposal solicitations, as an example. And so a lot of those are the requirements that go into a contract are usually group specific. And so there are opportunities to build and or use tools that can help within, say, Health and Human Services Agency, where there's tons of contracted service providers, or some of our other groups as well that may have contracts and need to build or use specific templates that can be trained into the AI model. The other thing I wanted to share is this is more some opportunities. I can get into a lot of detail, but because of the time, I'm just going to go through really quickly. We've explored different ways in which we could use AI potentially to make informed decisions around reducing unsheltered homelessness, to help with road safety detection, as an example, and cleaning our neighborhoods, or attracting investment in jobs and housing. How can we make our building processes more efficient? And then at a departmental level, there are more specific things that departments can use. And so these are just some examples of how could public works look at potentially leveraging AI. What about parks and recreation, fire and police departments? And I'm very aware that a lot of folks are typically under-resourced, and so there are already several use cases across the nation of, say, fire and police departments thinking about how to leverage AI. So a little further down, I'm going to give some examples of what the city of San Jose is doing to think about the use of AI and what they're actually testing in the here and now. But it's really helpful to think about what are all the potential opportunities specific to departments that we may want to be open to exploring. I'm going to go through some of the examples. Again, I know I'm going too quickly, but I think you may find it useful. Doing a little bit of a time check, so I want to be mindful on honoring the time, so I'll go through this quickly. We've been using it for traffic signals. We found a reduction in travel time by up to 20%. And so I'm happy to share more information about this offline if folks are curious. But again, this is more of a showcase of some of the ways in which we're thinking about leveraging it based on departments. There's been conversation about using it for traffic cameras to have a better sense of how much traffic goes through any specific area, so we can understand how traffic flows. We can plan for accordingly when certain areas are shut down of the city and how that impacts other roadways. There's also opportunities, and this is probably already being used in other parts of the nation, for automated license plate reading, as an example. Some of the more recent conversations we've had is how can we use it to detect any potential issues, whether it be illegal dumping, whether it be potholes or pothole detection before they get to stages where it's even more expensive to repair. And part of what I also wanted to do, those are some of our more complex use cases. I wanted to offer some of the inspiration that a lot of our folks that are just working within departments have been using the build function of ChatGPT to create specific GPTs. And so I feel like it's an excellent opportunity by creating the space to do these showcases within the city of San Jose for folks to bring in ideas, right? There's lots of brilliance embedded within an organization, and what better way than to create space for folks to offer some of these ideas. So we've offered showcases, and these are just a flavor of what those showcases are. People submit, they offer an explanation of what the GPT is, a link to it, what it's able to help them with, and we're working on getting the numbers associated with actual time savings. So I'm going to go through them really quickly. This is something one of our folks from our Department of Public Works put together to help with procurement scopes. Here's another example that someone from our Environmental Services Department put together as an AI assistant to help with environmental inspections and understanding what they need to do as part of their job to help and assist with some of the prevention. This is around emissions. Again, someone else from our Environmental Services Department. And we get a lot of call data as well. And so just having a sense of what are the major issues associated with call data, using a GPT to help pull some of that information. This is an IT support assistant. So again, you get a sense of like all the different ways in which people are thinking about using AI to pull information quickly and have it readily available when it's already there. So lastly, I don't know that I'll have much time, but I'll just offer some thoughts about potential opportunities. I know in my time at the Health and Human Services Department under Behavioral Health Services, as an example, we had a psychiatric hospital that had many regulations associated with it. And so there was opportunity to create a conversational agent. If you're operating in a regulatory space and have a question about Joint Commission accreditation or hospital accreditation, you can very easily look stuff up. And when you have clinicians on ground working with clients, not a whole lot of time to be able to do that. And so there are many opportunities to use them as conversational agents, to sift through policies. And so there are many different examples that I've shared that could be brought into a County of San Diego context should there be the interest, appetite, and desire to be able to do that. So I'm nearing the end of my time. I think I've gone a little over. Apologies in advance, but I appreciate the opportunity. And if folks have any questions, please feel free to reach out or join the coalition. Thank you again very much for your time, and look forward to hearing more from folks.
Jerry, thank you so much for that presentation. Every second was excellent information, so thank you for being so succinct. I do have a couple just really quick questions for you, if you don't mind. And some of these are very basic. How did the city of San Jose build buy-in among departments and employees in the public for its AI initiatives? Because I'm deeply concerned, how do we bring people along? Because I suspect that you want to have great data and buy-in.
No, that's a great question. And it is requires, sorry, I feel like I'm going to use the consultant buzzwords here, a multi-pronged approach of different folks within our organization, speaking with folks at different levels of our, say, city leadership. So just to be explicit, I'm within the city manager's office as an example. And so I've noticed that I can speak to AI all the time, but I can see folks' eyes glaze over just because they keep hearing about it, or I can show how it's used. And so as an example, I've created or used Miro to lay out project plans and then use the AI function to highlight sticky notes and create summaries in real time in front of leadership. And I do believe in seeing is believing. Once people see how it can be used, then they become more open to, like, maybe we should really be thinking seriously about using this tool potentially. So those are conversations we have at, say, a city manager's office level. There's many folks within departments that have an interest in using the tool. And so having a very forward-thinking mayor as sort of, let's use this technology, hosting the GovAI Coalition Summit in the city of San Jose, having very forward-thinking leadership in the IT departments, as an example, has been really helpful in opening the door to the interest and in creating the space for folks to come in, a low-stakes environment, mess around with tools. And then once folks use them, it's like, oh my gosh, I can see now the potential of how this can be used. So we use that as a way to activate excitement and energy to sort of set the way for more complex projects, which usually come fraught with more challenges around use of data, data security, data safety, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one, I would say, set of efforts that our folks really spend a lot of energy being intentional about showing examples and how it can be used, speaking to the potential misuse of it and making sure we're being aware of what the potential risks are of misuse. The other effort is spending time and energy with the community and with our city council, educating them and spending a lot of time of like, here's what AI is, here's sort of the truth, facts, things we should be aware of, I think is very important. So bringing folks along for the ride by offering educational opportunities or just general education on AI with folks who generally don't have the time to sit down and learn when they've got many priorities focused on just running a city, as an example. So I hope that answers your question. I could probably give more detail if you want me to be more specific, but those are like general approaches that we've taken to the work.
That's outstanding. I have one last question for you, because you did answer some of the questions all in that. Have the AI tools implemented in San Jose resulted in cost savings for the city? And I know it's early on. There's a lot of educating going on, so you probably have a lot of upfront costs. But are you seeing a return on that investment?
So I'm smiling because that's an excellent question. I think it connects with your first question, which is, as our city manager, governmental leaders have the responsibility of being responsible with dollars. And so with budget deficits and not a whole lot of money to spend on, say, AI projects, we realized quickly we're going to have to demonstrate the potential cost savings of time, of staff. And so we are actively working on that now. So I showed you some showcases that had VPTs. We've been asking folks to share roughly how much time they've saved. Early feedback has been somewhere in the hundreds of hours when we're thinking about some of our larger departments. We're working to quantify that or have a standard of quantification and then try to multiply it by some form of hourly, loaded rate. But we're currently working on collecting that data because I think our leadership is, okay, this is interesting. This sounds good. Now, how much are we saving, right? Because some of these projects, or some of the complexity requires higher dollar amounts. And so we need to be able to demonstrate savings. We need to be able to demonstrate efficiency. We need to be able to demonstrate that the energy that we're investing in building out these tools and platforms is actually resulting in cost efficiencies and savings and giving staff time and ability to do other stuff. Leveraging it more for grunt work, AI for grunt work, for stuff that can be processed that doesn't require sort of human in the loop, as an example. So I know it's a very long answer, but it's not, we're working on that because we understand that really to be able to take us to the next step, it's going to be help us start offering some dollars, some actual numbers and time savings and cost savings.
Thank you so much for your time. We miss you in San Diego, but San Jose is very lucky to have you. Thank you again, and I'm sure my office and others will have additional questions to follow up with you.
Thank you.
Next up, excuse me. Next, we'll address one of the most pressing topics related to AI, its impact on the workforce. Satomi Rash-Ziegler and Dr. Lily Irani will be discussing how AI is reshaping labor markets, the challenges of job displacement, and the opportunities for upskilled workers, ensuring that AI adoption benefits both our workforce, and the community is essential to sustainable innovation. Our goal at the county is to make sure we empower our workers and give them superpowers while improving their quality of life. With that, I'd like to invite Satomi and Dr. Irani to please go ahead with their presentation.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Anderson. My name is Satomi Rash-Ziegler. I'm the Executive Director of the UC San Diego Labor Center.
And my name is Dr. Lily Irani. I'm an Associate Professor of Communication with an affiliation of Computer Science, and I'm also the Faculty Director of the UCSD Labor Center.
So just to review what we'll be covering today, we'll be going over what is AI exactly. Then we'll cover some case studies that will kind of representative of AI in the workplaces and what we're seeing. Also, we'll discuss case studies that will talk about that will talk about the economic development and public health and environmental impact potential impacts on public health and environmental health. And then we'll go through some recommendations or best practices with implementing and regulating AI. All right, are we ready? Okay. So really quickly about UCSD. So as you all know, we are a top-ranked, we are a top-ranked university. We have over 160 undergraduate majors in a wide array of fields. We have a 26-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio with a number of faculty honors, including Nobel Peace Prizes, Pulitzer Prizes, National Medal of Sciences. We're number 9 amongst the global leader of influential researchers. And then just last year, we had 1.7 billion in research awards. Next slide, please. The UC San Diego Labor Center specifically was established in 2023 to support workers and labor organizations. Our center serves as a bridge between academic research and real-world labor issues. So labor centers across the UC, there are 9 new labor centers, but a total of...
Total of 9, actually.
Oh, total of 9, sorry. 6 new labor centers. 9 labor centers across California, across the UC system. And we are one of the 6 new centers that was established in '23 with a $13 million allocation from the California state budget. So these centers are dedicated to advancing worker rights, conducting research on labor markets, providing resources for both workers and employers. We focus on empowering diverse workforce communities through education, advocacy, and collaboration. So recent discussions around artificial intelligence have further highlighted the importance of our work as we seek to navigate the implications of AI on workforce and labor dynamics. So in December, as the supervisor knows, we successfully hosted a regional conference that brought together key stakeholders, including members from the supervisor's office, amongst other government entities, community-based organizations, labor groups. Folks served on our advisory committee. So this conference allowed us to explore the intersection of labor, technology, and fostering a dialogue in our region, which we really haven't had before. So moreover, the labor centers in general serve as an essential resource for governments and policymakers, providing data-driven insights and support to help shape informed labor policies. So our goal is really to create sustainable solutions that will benefit workers and their families and communities, ensuring that their needs are met in a rapidly changing landscape. Thank you. Okay, so our areas of expertise in the short time that we've been in existence are pretty deep. So organizing theory and application, organizational change, the Lithium Valley, leadership development, innovation and design principles, agriculture, international and global solidarity, just transition, and of course, AI and other advanced technologies. Okay.
All right. So with that introduction to what our center does, since we're new, we wanted you all know, I'll start deep diving into what is AI. So when we talk about AI, a lot of images come to mind. Human-like intelligence, ChatGPT, the terror of deep fakes. But AI is actually a term the technology industry uses to describe a wide variety of technologies, including ones that have hidden off-site human workers making decisions about the county's data in this case. So today the boom in AI mostly refers to machine learning technologies. So the way machine learning technologies work is that there are special kinds of algorithms or computer code that analyze data and then make predictions or decisions based on patterns within that data. Before machine learning, a lot of algorithms were based on rules that engineers would write based on ideas about the task that might make sense to the human programmer or to others who might investigate the code. But machine learning algorithms are different in that they're a way of creating computer code that just churns through lots, like oceans of data, and it detects patterns in the data, but those patterns are not always available for us as the people using that code to investigate, to interrogate, and to see if the logic, the patterns that are detected in that code actually make sense, align with our values. So that's one of the reasons why I actually think of artificial intelligence or machine learning, not so much as intelligence, but more as algorithms that are excellent at going through reams, vast oceans of data that might be hard to go through otherwise, but are really good at guessing. They're guessing at patterns. They're not actually knowing. So AI doesn't have a conceptual understanding of the problem. It just sees numbers. In a good AI, the guesses are right most of the time, but they can also be wrong. And so because AI can always be wrong, it's critical that there be human oversight and override that prevent wrong decisions from becoming harms. Another way of thinking about it is that artificial intelligence aggregates across a whole bunch of content, Facebook pages scraped from the web, tech support documents, social media posts, internal information to your organization. But knowledge, turning that content into knowledge actually requires judgment. Judging, is that the most reliable information? These two documents, they use the same word, but is that same word actually referring to the same real thing in the world? These are the things that we as humans are always going to be bringing into the situation. And I want to emphasize that hidden human workers are always part of AI. And this is actually an area where I've been doing research for about 15 years. But a simple example is self-driving cars. If you've been to San Francisco, you'll see a lot of cars from Waymo, which is owned by Google, driving around the city. Those cars have had a lot of data poured into them, billions of dollars of research resources. But at the end of the day, those cars get into situations where there's remote workers who can see through the cameras that can get those cars out of sticky pickles that they're in. And the question is always, are those high quality jobs? Are those workers that you trust? Are those workers that have your constituents' needs in mind? What transparency do you have into how those workers are trained and operating on your county's information? Because AI is a guessing machine, that's part of why people will talk about AI hallucinating. Like when ChatGPT comes up with what sounds like human language, but sometimes in guessing what is going to be a reasonable next thing to say in human language, it also might say something that is completely nonsensical, and we might recognize it as such, but grammatically it might be correct. So that's just one example of where we see AI is good at guessing. I also want to talk about, thank you, Tomi. I also want to just zoom out from AI as these technologies that we're considering designing and implementing, to AI as a vast industry. So AI is a term that AI technologies have attracted vast amounts of investment, unprecedented amounts of financial investment, and even up to the last year. And so that means that we're seeing a lot of experimental technologies. We're seeing a lot of startups. We're seeing a lot of businesses that have had money thrown at them in order to see which business models, which technical models, which companies are going to be successful, and have a high rate of return for venture capitalists. Economist Carlota Perez actually talks about this process of guessing and trying out technologies as foundational to all new technologies, from the steam engine to the combustion engine to artificial intelligence, where there's a phase of trying out a lot of different functions and then seeing where the real efficiencies and uses are. So I wanted to put our county's challenge in the context of economic theory and history, to say there's going to be a lot of stuff coming at us being offered, and we would be in for a wild ride, and I hope that we can be prudent. So with that, I want to turn it back to Satomi to begin our case studies about how AI impacts the workplace.
So yes, now we're going to explore ways in which artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies have been deployed in the workplace. So these case studies are supposed to illustrate both opportunities and challenges presented by these technologies, really highlighting real-world examples of how organizations are adopting these new technologies, and the impacts that they're having and experiencing as a result. So, hopefully by providing kind of these examples, we can provide a clear understanding of the evolving relationship between technology and workforce dynamics, ultimately hoping, we are guided in the direction of creating equitable strategies for the future of work. So the first case we have is Hershey's ERP failure. So Hershey's, we might know Hershey's, they make these delightful, yummy, delicious candies that we eat, not just during Halloween, but it's a confectionery company, right? They decided to modernize their operations by implementing an enterprise resource planning system. So an ERP system is a software platform that is designed to integrate and streamline various business processes across an organization. So, such as finance, supply chain, basically it's supposed to consolidate it into a streamlined efficiency, into a unified system for improving efficiency and decision-making, essentially. So the goal was to enhance operational efficiency and streamline these processes. However, Hershey's rushed the implementation of this ERP system to be ready this was in the 90s, the year 2000. So it's an early example. But instead of going with the recommended timeline of like 48 months, they instead tried to do it within 30 months. So basically the haste was intended to avoid potential disruptions associated with like the Y2K, but also they were trying to meet the deadline of Halloween and to be able to fulfill their order fulfillments. during the Halloween candy season, right? So in their rush, Hershey's management didn't adequately involve or consult with the employees who were key to the success of the implementation of this new technology. So, this lack of stakeholder input resulted in a system that was not user-friendly or aligned with the actual needs of the workers that were doing the work on the ground floor. Furthermore, insufficient training was provided to the staff, leaving them unprepared to effectively use this new system. And the impact of this oversight was substantial. So during the crucial Halloween season, right, where everyone is demanding their candy, Hershey faced a major operational disruption, which led to a significant drop in sales and plummeted in their stock prices. So they lost around $100 million in sales. They suffered an 19% loss. And, the effects were felt not just in the loss of the profit, but also by the extreme stress and duress that the staff and the employees were operating under not trying to operate with technology that they were not familiar with, especially given the compressed timeline. So even though Hershey's had the inventory, they were not able to fulfill their orders because of the implementation. Oh, sorry. Okay. So basically, this case reminds us of the importance of involving stakeholders, and we'll talk about especially employees in the planning process and the implementation stages of technology projects. So making sure that we have adequate training and open communication are vital to these new systems, and I think we're going to talk about iterations of being able to capture data, identifying which data that you want to capture, making sure that those goals are being met, but also keeping your eye on the characteristics or the impacts that we aren't necessarily looking for initially, right? So let's go. We can skip to the next one. Let's see. So AI and sepsis. So what happened? A healthcare system implemented an AI tool to detect sepsis early, producing high rates of alerts without involving nurses in the process or allowing for human override, disregarding their expertise. And essentially, the AI system, what happened is that the AI system generated numerous false positives. So it was really good at detecting sepsis. Really good at detecting sepsis, except when the nurses would approach the patients, they would see this patient is not septic. So there were many false positives, but there was no override mechanism. So the nurses couldn't actually stop the machine and say this person doesn't have sepsis. Instead, they had to draw blood and confirm that this person didn't have sepsis, which actually opened them to more risk of increase their risk of infection from unnecessary interventions, put patient safety at risk, and raise the liability concerns for that healthcare system specifically. And not to mention the threats against the nurses' licenses, because who's accountable at that point, right? Mm-hmm. If the nurses aren't allowed to override, but they are responsible for that patient, and that patient dies or something happens to them, the accountability falls on the staff, and their licenses are threatened. So the key takeaway, so in situations such as this, and not just in professional situations where we're working with professionals, but implementing AI, involving the folks that are participating, that are doing the actual groundwork is essential, right? Establishing human oversight, override mechanisms, ensures that, that folks are safe, and leveraging the expertise of the subject matter experts, the workers, I think is going to be critical to mitigating legal and ethical risks. And our last case regarding workplace impacts specifically focuses on the concept of co-design in the digital age. So in this case, AI implementation in the hotel industry, a hotel chain implemented an AI system to prioritize the room cleaning schedules amongst the room attendants, but the process did not involve the input from the hotel workers. So what ended up happening is the way the algorithm worked is that it scheduled the elite status folks first, and so the room attendants were actually running from one floor to another floor, trying to clean these rooms at different floors at different, in the order that the algorithm had told them to. but it led to decreased efficiency. These are room attendants pushing heavy carts. And they have a strategy with how they clean the room. So they might go across a given hallway with several rooms, strip all the beds, then vacuum all the floors. There might be a certain order to this. So, this, like I said, the process didn't involve worker input, so it led to significant inefficiencies. The AI system's prioritization resulted in room attendants frequently moving between floors with heavy carts, increasing the physical strain, reducing overall productivity. And this case really underscores the necessity of incorporating input, once again, from workers, the subject matter experts of their jobs, and when implementing these AI tools. So ensuring that AI systems can be adjusted based on real-world conditions and real feedback in real time, to maintain the efficiency and work and the satisfaction of the folks that we're serving, right? So, by engaging workers at the initial steps of the process, so identifying the problems, right? Not just from the implementation of the technology itself, but from the inception of what's the problem we're trying to solve? Because in many cases, we're seeing that the wrong problem is being solved, right? The wrong questions are being asked. And so they see a problem, and it's not necessarily attacking the root of the problem, but going around it. So really, this is a powerful reminder that the value of worker involvement in technology development, ideally, it would be great if we could go to the vendors and work with the vendors to create the technology based on the input and the feedback from the folks that are doing the groundwork. That's not always the case. Most of the time, vendors are approaching, folks, county supervisors, right, and saying, oh, we have this magic way of fixing and making your operations more efficient, which sounds great, right? We all want government to be more efficient, everything to be more efficient, right? To run in a way that is, optimal. However, a lot of these technologies are not as developed as the folks that are peddling them might indicate that they are, right? And so there might be huge gaps in between what they're saying and the actual delivery, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So we can.
All right. So I'm going to now talk about some of the ways that AI impacts economic development. Thank you, Tony. So the first case I'm going to talk about is automated background checks. 90% of landlords and employers rely on automated background checking companies. These algorithms, these companies will go take data from disparate data sources, scraping data off the internet, using open data sources, government data sources, and come up with risk scores for people. And unfortunately, because they're automated, they have minimal, if any, human oversight. The National Consumer Law Center found that often these background check scores are erroneous. Data is often missing. Data can be incorrectly merged so that somebody might have a background check score informed by data about somebody else completely. Data is infrequently updated. And the impact is that people can be denied jobs or housing because of faulty background checks. They have no chance to see or correct. And in fact, I think the FTC has issued rulings about these background check companies. These AI checks specifically can undercut county efforts to provide fair access to jobs through the Fair Chance program, for example, or fair access to housing. So the takeaway here is that automated scores produced by AI processes require transparency and human democratic oversight to make sure they are unbiased and they're based on actually accurate information. Another case study that is actually closer to San Diego is algorithmic price fixing. So algorithmic price fixing is when landlords use companies that gather market information. Landlords will say, this is how much we're charging for our rental properties. And that company will use algorithms and the data they've collected across all these landlords to algorithmically suggest rent levels that will maximize profits. There's also been FTC and DOJ action about this, and the city of San Diego has actually taken it up in the city council. So what these algorithms mean, and what specifically these algorithms in the hands of these companies mean, is that property owners can engage in cartel-like behavior where they're actually avoiding market competition. Rent has increased 26% in the last 3 years in San Diego, and this is thought to be one of the contributing causes. And rising housing costs increase the rates of homelessness, with costs to the county and other public service providers, as we all know intimately. So a key takeaway here is that centralized data gathering and pattern matching also centralizes market power and exacerbates inequality with cost to public safety and order. And finally, I'm going to conclude by talking about a way that AI impacts environmental and public health. And that is through data centers and the impact that data centers have on air quality. So data centers are essentially warehouses of computer servers that need immense amounts of power to process computing data. So if you watch Netflix, your movies are coming through a data center. If you use ChatGPT, when you type in your request, ChatGPT has all of its algorithms churning through all that language data in data centers somewhere. And so any large language model AI, like ChatGPT made by OpenAI, but also models made by Google, Meta, Anthropic, they rely on power-hungry 24/7 data centers to process these unprecedentedly enormous data sets. So the impact is that data centers use a lot of electricity, so people have talked about the carbon impact and they do report their carbon consumption, but also these data centers actually require backup generators to make sure they're always on, and so they generate a lot of pollution. That pollution impacts low-income communities, where these data centers are usually located, exacerbating health impacts on the most vulnerable. But then pollution travels on air, impacting neighboring communities, and it crosses jurisdictions as well. Caltech and UC Riverside just published a study on this, where you can go deeper if you'd like to. And in that study, they estimated that a Northern Virginia data center has enough pollution that creates regional public health costs they estimate to be $190 to $260 million a year. So some key takeaways there are that large language model AIs, or these large data set consuming AIs, should be used judiciously, if at all. Tech companies should have to report air pollution and not just carbon, and that data center pollution should be shouldered equitably across the society that is using the technology. So we wanted to conclude with some key takeaways, and I'll turn it back to Satomi for that.
Sorry. And I know we're a little bit over time, so we'll try to be brief. So involving all stakeholders, as we discussed before, particularly end users, so whether if it's implementing technology to make the work easier or more efficient, so the planning and the implementation of the technology, so not just the implementation and the iteration, but also the planning of it and the training and communication, so having training, thorough training, but also open communication where there is a clear line of back and forth, and folks can, communicate about what works, what doesn't, and that, we're making sure we're answering the problems that are aligned with, answering the problems that really need to be solved. Defining what success, carefully defining success, and testing to make sure the AI and other tech tools actually work before the full rollout. So instead of a full implementation, maybe cutting it short, starting with the department, rolling it out small in small chunks so that we can see what's working, what's not. Demand transparency from vendors. Data is collected, period. Demand that we have access to that data, know what they're collecting, and understand what they're doing with that information. Let's see, make sure human oversight, there's human oversight through high quality and invested workers is provided, meaning having folks we're really trying to support we want to make sure we want to maintain good jobs, and that we have human oversight that is able to make the judgments that AI or computers and technology or software algorithms can't make. So I think those are the primary takeaways that we have.
So.
Okay, and then obviously there's a bunch of stuff in the news about AI that's happening. New York State just passed a law, basically of data transparency and accessibility. Lily talked about the price fixing amongst the real estate agencies or the landlords. The FTC is cracking down on AI vendors that are making these crazy claims, you might have heard about the AI lawyer. Well, they're now being investigated by the FTC. So, because they weren't meeting the claims that they were stating, essentially. And I think, yeah.
Okay, so in conclusion, we've presented a very brief overview of the complexity of this issue, but how this issue affects our residents, our neighbors, the workers in the county is going to be shaped by the specific industries and needs of this region. And so to that end, our Labor Center is doing a regional survey asking how workers here feel about AI. We've launched the survey about a month and a half ago. We've been distributing it through our networks, but we want to make sure we have coverage of all the regions of our county and all the industries of our county. And so we are coming to you for help. The survey asks workers in what way, do they see AI as an opportunity? Do they see it as a threat? What comes to mind when they think of AI, and what are they seeing in their workplaces so that we can have more tailored policy responses. So the survey is available in English, Spanish, and Tagalog, and we can translate it into other languages, and we hope the county can become a partner with us in making sure the voices of residents of the county and workers in the county are heard. So thank you so much. We look forward to the conversation, the deliberations, and coming up with policies that make sure our residents are served with good systems.
Well, thank you for your outstanding presentation. It's a completely different angle and very helpful to us. I have a couple of questions. How do we ensure that our workforce feels supported and empowered during this transition rather than seeing AI as a threat to their job?
I think incorporating workers in the initial conversations, or from the beginning of the process of what you're talking about, AI, to the end, working with them to really identify where are the areas that AI could be helpful and really make their jobs more efficient. So, we saw in the previous Gov AI presentation, they were talking about, hey, there are different things that, different tasks that could be, assigned to AI. Instead of making those assumptions, actually having the conversation with workers, and then in the implementation, when you're rolling it out, test it out, because, it's science, right? You implement, test, see what the result is. If it's not working, then you tweak it, then you re-implement and you test and you see if it's not working, then you tweak it. If it is working, okay, then we have a model that we can operate off of. But if you want folks to feel not threatened and encouraged by the introduction or implementation of new technologies, include them in the process. Make it as transparent as possible so that people know what's going on. When they feel like there's an open line of communication, they're going to feel supported. They're going to feel like they're engaged, and they'll be part of this win-win-win kind of strategy that you're taking on.
May I add
Yes.
to that? Okay. I think one of the really important reasons for testing and specifying what success looks like for your AI is because we're in this experimental phase where there are a lot of things being tried out and a lot of companies being invested in that need to, find anchor cities. So it's about making sure that the AI functions like it's supposed to. I also wanted to just caution around efficiency, because there are a lot of examples of AI and algorithms being implemented for efficiency's sake, like state of Indiana implementing, hiring IBM for millions and millions of dollars to redo how it does social service determinations. But there were so many erroneous social service determinations that it actually created kind of legal liability. It created a lot of suffering among constituents and a lot of appeals processes. So it's very typical for designers of these computer systems, if they don't go through the process that Satomi is talking about, of engaging with workers on the ground, to miss a lot of tacit, unspoken knowledge that is really making the organization function. And so look out for the tacit knowledge, look out for the invisible kinds of work that are making things work. And yeah, like Satomi was saying, build from the ground up. And the last thing I wanted to add is that we are seeing, for the workers that are organized in unions, they're actually putting language into their union contracts that ask for input into the technology design process, ask for making sure their judgment is allowed to be used because some of the liability issues that Tomi is pointing to. I would look at that kind of contract language as as a kind of institutional bolster to making sure we have good design processes rather than an enemy of innovation. Frankly, the tech industry, I worked at Google for 4 years, and I went to school in Silicon Valley. The industry will often frame unions as enemies of innovation, contracts as impediments to innovation, but this is actually making sure that we have responsible and sustainable innovation, as you put it. So, I would say approach that with open arms, because you never know, there might be turnover in who's in charge of the county, and these are also a way of making sure we have good processes in place.
I have one last, more difficult question for you. Are there particular industries or job types where governments have successfully integrated AI without creating significant disruptions?
I can't think of one.
It's all experimental right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are test cases for success are very few because it's like AI has been blowing up recently, right? And so we're seeing a lot of the impacts, like the discrimination that we're seeing in the algorithms that are being used. So it's hard to say that there are successful test cases because people are still learning about like, how do we do this? Like people are just now beginning to ask questions. And I think part of that is the reason why we had the conference was to build base knowledge of our region, of the folks in our region, because we initially weren't having these conversations before. People are kind of confused, and AI, is really an enigmatic term that could mean it feels like it can mean a lot of things, and so it can be really confusing or intimidating. And so now we're just stepping into this realm. Like the first thing we had to do, I think, was build a foundation where we could all come together and at least start from the base and then explore from there. So I think it's hard to say if there are any successful cases out there right now. I mean, we're trying to find them, and we're actually trying to help facilitate successful cases by helping entities, with their processes or advising processes that would be that will most likely result in better outcomes, improved outcomes. But yeah.
Can I jump in on this too? And one example that didn't work is City of San Diego's initial smart street lights deployment, which was very similar to the City of San Jose presenter who presented the street camera system that could count pedestrians and count cars and bicycles and use that for planning. That is a very computationally intensive, expensive, and complicated way to count cars, and the City of San Diego streetlights actually didn't count bicycles and cars properly. Our research team actually discovered that, and Voice of San Diego published about it. The cases where people were using the ChatGPT-like technology to generate calls for procurement proposals in City of San Jose, that seemed promising to me in the sense that people were using this to automate something that does involve a lot of repetitive text, but the lawyers are going to have to review those texts because they're legally consequential, and so there's still a cost to that. The one case that I think is positive but might not work how you think, and this is the last example, is because I wanted to end on a positive. So UC San Diego did an experiment in their medical center where they had a ChatGPT-like technology to pre-draft emails for doctors. The doctors the doctors would use the pre-drafted emails. It actually took them 22% more time to answer patient mails rather than less time, but the doctors felt they wrote more compassionate mails because they weren't so stressed out. The AI was kind of doing the emotional labor of crafting something polite for them. So these things maybe can help, but not in the ways that you'd expect, and time saved is not always the value add.
Well, thank you both for taking time from your day to present. I really appreciated it. And we're off to the next phase. And what the most significant barriers to accelerating, oh, excuse me, I jumped the gun here. I'd like to introduce, as we look towards the future, ensuring the county's IT infrastructure is ready to support AI-driven initiatives is crucial. Our CIO, David Smith, will provide an overview of the county's IT system, contracts, and the role of the Innovation Fund in driving efficiency and modernization. And David, if you're ready to go, we'd love to hear from you.
I am, Supervisor. Supervisor Anderson, thank you for having us this afternoon today to talk about this. I also want to thank the previous speakers. Jerry from San Jose, we worked quite a bit together when he was down here, and it's great to see he's doing well in the UC San Diego Labor Center. Fascinating presentation. My presentation will be a little different in that I'm going to talk about the history of our IT contract, and then I'm going to talk about how we govern. I'm going to talk about how we buy services under the IT agreement, and then I'm going to talk about the Innovation Fund to give an overview of how we integrate new technologies like AI into our environment. So I'm going to take you back to 1998, a long time ago now, and give you an idea of what the county looked like at that time. We had what's called a hybrid organizational structure. We had 22% vacancies in IT. We were running 51 different phone systems. That's the PBX boxes. We had 38 voicemails, 8 vendors doing telecom, 38 separate help desks. I like to note that you had to have a help desk to find the help desk. 5 email systems, 8 data centers, old applications. We were uncoordinated and inefficient in our technical training environment. The board identified these issues in staff and asked the staff to look at opportunities to improve that. They wanted greater financial discipline, they wanted a customer-centric approach to service delivery, and they wanted online versus inline service delivery models. The county retained the services of an independent consultant, the Warner Group, which is now Gartner Consulting, to assist us with that, who assessed the county's technology and telecommunications equipment needs and the status at that time, determined areas of weakness and determined areas where investment would be helpful. One of the recommendations at that time was for the county to get to a level set position it needed to invest, again in 1998 dollars, over $100 million just to get us even. The county looked at that option and asked for other possibilities, and the consultant said there's a couple of different things you could do. One of when you're trying to improve technology, and started to talk about the possibility of retaining an outside professional to assist us with that or to outsource. So we were looking to improve recruitment and retention, access world-class technology services, distribute the investment costs over several years. I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea of purchasing software and infrastructure as a service, which smooths out the cost. Sharing risk and pursuing innovation, improving service levels, transforming our service delivery models, and basically just giving the county an opportunity, the employees, to be certain that they have the best technology available to ensure that they can do their job day in and day out. So in 1999, the county retained a private entity to reform, stabilize, and provide its IT environment. And through that, it established a centralized IT organization and supporting governance structure. It transformed the county's information system, and it established a culture of continuous improvement. And you're going to hear me talk quite a bit about continuous improvement as I go through this presentation today. So what'd that look like? Well, here's the results. We went from 38 help desks down to 1. We now call it a service desk, and I'll explain the change in language there in a moment. We have 1 integrated email system, single unified telephone system, and overall an IT structure that worked for the county. We went from disparate, disorganized, dysfunctional, and financially unsustainable to an organized and well-run IT system. Not without challenges, and we continue to work through those, but we did improve upon the IT system. So the timeline looks something like this. 1998, we looked to do the outsourcing, or I looked at the situation. In 1999, they retained the services of the first outsourcing group. It was called the Pennant Alliance, and it was primarily led by CSC. That agreement ended in 2006 when we recompeted and it entered into an agreement with Northrop Grumman. That was novated in 2011 over into HP. Northrop sought to get out of the IT local government business, at least then was. Hewlett-Packard was interested in continuing and provided services. In 2016, we recompeted the agreement. And at that time entered into a 7-year deal with a 5-year option with Hewlett-Packard. They've gone through a couple of name changes and are currently known as Paratime Enterprise Solutions, LLC. Okay, so I mentioned that we outsource how we got in we got into a situation where we're using an outsourced provider for our IT because the county was at the time facing financial and operational difficulties with the IT. Our IT governance structure was also problematic at the time. Frankly, there was no government structure. It was sort of the Wild West out there. You did what you wanted. If your department had money to buy some computers for your employees, you got them. If you didn't, well, good luck. And so we set up an IT governance structure that stabilized the IT and aligned the county's governance with the board's strategic vision and the direction the county wanted to go. So what is the governance structure for the county now? The Board of Supervisors sits at the top, and it provides input on policy and specific direction on programmatic direction it wants us to go. County executives implement those directives through the IT Management Committee, referred to it as ITMC. ITMC is chaired by the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Caroline. The participants are the 4 general managers, or the DCAOs, County Council, the Department of Human Resources Director, and myself. We meet every other month, and we discuss large IT issues and programmatic decisions, policy direction for the county. That group is informed by the IT governance group, which is made up of the IT lead for each of the county groups, so the 4 groups. And then it's also staffed by my department. It receives support and information from various IT subcommittees that have strategy and policy. And then over on the side here, you see that the Business Process Governance Group, which is made up of the funding of the finance directors for the county, provide input on finance decisions on our IT decisions. So we are aligning our finance, our programmatic with our county's values and the board's direction and strategic vision. For the elected officials that are not part of this direct structure, they are represented in ITMC through their general manager, with a footnote that the district attorney and the sheriff provide their own IT, so they're not part of the structure. A caveat to that, however, they do get their telephones through us. And then finally, the policy and strategy, it bubbles up through the departments and the programs and the county technology office. I really appreciated the comments by the previous speakers on the importance of including employees in decision-making, and particularly subject matter experts. You're going to see us talk about that a little bit later, but this model reflects the importance of that, bringing that up into our decision-making model so that we can hopefully avoid some of the problems that the case studies they talked about showed. Okay, next area we're going to talk about is the IT service delivery. So it's how we entered into an outsourcing agreement, it's how we govern it. So now what's the current agreement look like? Our current agreement is divided into 6 what we refer to as service frameworks. So if you step back and say, what does Peraton, since they're our contractor, provide? They provide our IT services. The contract defines IT services as anything IT. Okay, so if the board directs me to go do something new that's IT, I don't have to go look in the agreement and say, is it in here? We defined it as anything future in IT, thus future-proofing the contract against things, say, for AI, like AI. Generative AI was not a topic in 2016, but we will have no problem integrating it into the environment because the contract itself is written with the concept of continuous improvement in mind, and it is designed to be able to bring those kind of new technologies in. So how do we do that? Well, we do it in these 6 different functional areas. I'll walk you through these. The first is cross-functional services. So think of cross-functional services as an umbrella for the entire contract. It's here that the management of the overall IT organization occurs. So Peraton has its contracts and acquisition management services that faces off with our Department of Purchasing and Contracting and my contracts folks. These are the different areas in that that we do that. Now, I don't want to spend the time going through a whole bunch of these, but I want to highlight one of them as an example. So every one of these functions supports the other functions in the other areas of the enterprise. So you'll see on here something called configuration management. Well, configuration management makes sure that our servers integrate with our laptops, that work with our network, that work with our nearly 500 applications. You can imagine trying to make 500 applications interweave. So that's what those services do. And this area of the agreement governs those types of activities. The next area is service desk services. I love the double S there. The concept with this one, and it's funny, previous agreements we referred to this as help desk services, and we realized that help desk implies an incident. Something went wrong and you call for help. And we didn't want that to be the only reason you reached out. We wanted it to be the service because that's the intent of our provider. We want service. We want world-class best IT service available. So we call it the service desk. And we provide these types of services through it. One of the things I want to point out here as an example is ServiceNow, which you see third from the bottom. That's an integrated platform that allows us to submit, or employees to submit requests for services. So in the past, what would have happened is an employee would have called the help desk, would have gotten a ticket. The ticket would have gone to one of the other silos, and it would have sat in the silo till they figured it out. And it would have been difficult to track it. This new, what we call platform, allows the employee and the other parts of the contract to see how it relates to each of those different pieces within the contract so as to better integrate it and make it more effective in implementing it. I point this out because this is part of the continuous improvement I mentioned. This was not a feature originally, but as we've worked to improve services for the client, worked with our partner to do that, we've come up with this model, and that would be an example of it. The next one is end user services. So that's you and me, right? That's the desktop, that's the laptop. Here is an area where I think the county 25 years ago did something really neat to benefit the employees. I mentioned how we had so many disparate systems. Well, if you were in a department that maybe didn't get funding for IT in the way other departments do, because our funding often differs, you could have really old equipment. Maybe you couldn't connect to the internet as well. It'd be difficult to do your job. You weren't as great a performer. Now all of a sudden it's hard to move within the organization. We set basic minimum standards for our computers, so every county employee has a laptop or a desktop, and they get a new one every 3 years for laptops or desktops every 4 years. So the thing works and they can do their job, and no county employee is handicapped in their personal development by a device that doesn't work. Now, that's not to say they're not perfect. We have we have issues. That's why we have a service desk to respond to those. But that was a core fundamental principle in the agreement, was to support every employee no matter what level in the organization they were at. Network services. Network services are just what they sound like. It's how we talk to each other. It's the cables and the communication that go between the buildings. It started out as copper cable. Now it's fiber. It used to be all cables. Now it's Wi-Fi. And this is another area where we have, through the agreement, had continuous improvement. I do want to point out one area that we are continuously improving in. Last month, we're seeing the horrible tragedies up in Los Angeles today. This past week. We had that down here in San Diego, 18 years ago. County did a lot of things to make sure that doesn't happen again. IT was one of them, and one of the things that we do is our partner, AT&T, has these trucks that they will drive out to incidents that immediately provide Wi-Fi and all sorts of connectivity at these incidents. Well, in working with AT&T, Peraton, and some of our discussing some of our needs, we realized that we had nothing and a truck. And we thought we have nothing in between. So we worked with AT&T, and they came up with something that we're calling a network in a box. And it's literally a briefcase with a Starlink panel on it, a satellite receiver, a telephone that looks like a county receiver, right? And a MiFi and a network cable. And within minutes, they can take this to a location, open it up, set that up, boom, you're on the county network completely, anywhere in the county. Provides us tremendous disaster response capabilities, and we can deploy it throughout the county. Another example of continuous improvement and innovation we're doing within the agreement. Cloud and data center is our next framework. This is another area of continuous improvement. Give you an example here would be server procurement. In the past, we would buy a server, stack and rack them. You see a server farm there. So you buy it, takes several months to procure it, then you go install it. 2 to 4 months later, you have the thing up. With cloud services now and what's called virtual servers, we can deploy a server in a couple of days and in an emergency in a couple of hours. Again, continuous improvement and opportunity to better serve the constituents. The next framework and the final framework is called application services. This is an interesting area because I do think this is an area going forward we're going to probably see some pretty significant changes. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you had a large number of people on site that did daily programming activities, put together software for you, things like that. Now, most new software and even large programs are going to what's called software as a service model. Think of that as Gmail that you have. And so there's a lot less folks in your shop that are doing the programming. You're buying these services instead through the cloud. And so we are evaluating, we're able to do that through the agreement, we've expanded that, but we are looking at how that will look in the future for the county. So all of this rolls up into an annual spend. I just give you a sense of how these frameworks come out. You can see that our 23-24 spend was $212 million. 24-25 projected spend's about $218 million. Most of the spend is in applications, which is within the Peraton contract development, and then third party, which are when we buy applications outside of the contract. The large stuff we typically don't buy through the contract, we compete it through DPC. Just some idea of the magnitude of our environment. We have 18,000 PCs and laptops, another 18,600 access points where people get into our network, and then about 8,600 devices that we manage, phones, iPads, things like that through the contract, and then there are some outside of that as well. The current contract is a 7-year term with a 5-year option. It ends on December 31, 2028. As far as planning with the future, we are very thankful to you, Supervisor, for having this committee because you are helping us get started. We had 2025 as the year to get started on working through how it is what the next agreements are going to look like, what the direction the board wants to go. We want to work with your staff over this year and you on that. Document that future strategy next year. Then we'll take the actions, the procurements, what has to be done in 2027, and then 2028 it takes to transition. Generally, it's a year to plan, a year to procure, a year to transition an account as the size of ours. Okay, I'm going to conclude today with a discussion of innovation. I talked about the core agreement principle of continuous improvement, and I've mentioned that a number of times because as cool as our innovation program is, I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that it's not just this one program over here. It is embedded in the very culture of our IT organization, and it has been for 25 years. And then we innovate both through that program, but also at the infrastructure level, the servers, our security, all sorts of stuff like that. On top of that, I have a formalized innovation program that has 3 arms to it right now. We have the Innovation Fund. We each contribute $500,000 to it, the county and Peraton. We had something called an Innovation Day. I'll talk about an Ideathon. How does the Innovation Fund work? We identify use cases. I get those a couple of different ways. Departments can submit them directly to me. They can grab any of my staff. You could call me and tell me about it. We also collect them through Innovation Day, which I'll talk about, and then we did something through Ideathon. It's a proof of concept opportunity for a solution. It's governed by an innovation board, which is made up of me and the Peraton lead. It has 3 phases. We create a charter, which is really just a summary of work and objectives. They perform the work, and then they test and evaluate. The test and evaluate is a critical feature. When we prepare it, we always bring in subject matter experts. The lessons that UCSD was talking about with integrating your programmatic and your employees are lessons we learned a long time ago, and they're hard lessons to learn, but it's important lessons. We test and evaluate. The proof of concept projects should be time-boxed and focused. We want to be in and out in 90 days. We don't always make that on the more complicated ones, but that's the goal. And we don't do it to productionize them. It's a concept, and then if it's a concept that works, then we look at it and we go, okay, that's something we could program through an existing low-code solution, or it's something we need to procure. Then we go through the procurement process. We're going to compete it. We're going to, through DPC, we're going to do whatever we do that. This doesn't become a way to circumvent procurement rules. So, Innovation 2024. We had 21 ideas proposed. We had an additional 28 from the Ideathon I'm going to talk about. We funded 11. We completed 5 proofs. We recommended 3 for production that are subject to funding availability, right? Because that's the other part of this. Like I said, once we get done with this, then you got to productionize it. There are costs that the departments, the programs have to decide. And that's when I hand it off to the department to make those decisions as they manage their budget. And then we've got 6 actively in flight. This just gives you a sense of what those look like. I want to kind of quickly just identify 3 of them that give you a sense of kind of how this plays out. There's one up there called the Name Coach. It's the 3rd one down. David Smith is a really complicated and difficult name to pronounce, so people mess it up frequently. This was near and dear to my heart. No, but no, you know, some folks have names that I am not good at pronouncing names, and I would have loved something like this. Did is allowed the employee to read their name into a function and attach to the email. So when I got an email from the employee, I could hear the employee tell me what their name was, right? And it made it easier for me to use. Other ways it could spell it out phonetically and do some other things. Neat solution was a pretty costly solution. We found out one of our existing vendors may be including that in a future offering that will be no additional cost to us. So it was a successful proof of concept, but not deployed for those reasons. And a good example of why it's a neat thing to do, but we didn't push it out because of the consequence. The second one is Google's council transcription, which is about midway through this. Here we're using AI to transcribe and search videos. Here council is providing that human oversight that they were talking about. But if you think about the amount of time somebody would sit there and watch a video and try to do it, because I've done that before, it's awful. And then have transcription that could do it for you and go back and see it. Then you could search it. The ability to quickly and efficiently search data for evidence and things like that for litigation for the county is tremendously useful for them. That is a mid-flight project that they're working on and is going well so far. The final one is an example of one that's coming that just got started, and that's the TT Treasurer Tax Collector Hotline. And that's an enhanced interactive voice recognition. Really neat software, but one of the things we're looking at that is the human oversight of that, right? So in the way that you as a person supervise humans that are in a call center, you have to supervise AI in a call center too. It just means reading the scripts to make sure it's not hallucinating. Last slide before questions. I mentioned we have other innovation ideas. We had innovation days before COVID. When COVID came along, that stopped. We started them up again in 23, and we've had one in 23 and 24. What is Innovation Day? We bring together county employees and existing vendors who have technology in our environment that's innovative and new, but immediately available to the departments that they can look at. In the past, we did innovation days that we had stuff that wasn't in the environment, and what would happen is an employee would look at it and go, man, I could really use that. And we'd say, oh, that's terrific. Go call DPC and do a procurement in a couple of years from now, you might get something. We wanted people to be able to get it into the environment immediately. So the innovation day is existing in the environment, how you get it out. It's basically cross-sharing. We did something called an Ideathon in May of 2024. Here we brought together business leads from the various departments identified by the general managers, and we spent an entire day cooking up ideas. Hey, what are your problems? What are things that your departments are struggling with? What are the employees in your departments not able to do well? Where can we come up with ways to do things more efficiently? Some of this resulted in some AI ideas, some chat bots, some things like that, and we're processing that through the Innovation Fund right now as well. I mentioned the Innovation Day as existing technology. We are looking at opportunities to expand that, but we're doing it conscious of the procurement rules surrounding it and making sure that we are fair to vendors in that environment. With that, again, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. You always do such a great job of distilling down a lot of complication and making it very easy to follow, so thank you for that. I have a couple just quick questions for you. How is the county engaging with residents to ensure transparency and build trust around AI-driven incentives, especially in the areas directly impacting their communities?
That's an excellent question, Supervisor, and I personally have not been leading those efforts. I am made aware of the consequences frequently. I get an email or two a week about somebody who got spammed with some sort of AI. As I was watching the presentation, particularly on the city of San Jose, I was looking at that as some possible opportunities for us to perhaps work with your office or others to do some things like that. We have participated, generally speaking, in a more expansive way. On a more specific basis, we work with employees to alert them. We've done internal training, so we treat our employees as part of the community in that regard. We've worked, provided information and such to contractors and when I say contractors, I don't mean IT contractors. I mean our other services contractors to support in that area as well and get information out. And then, of course, this AI subcommittee has provided a ton of many opportunities for me to speak to folks in the community and get information out there.
Thank you. What's the most significant barrier to accelerating the county's adoption of AI tools? Yes.
Can I cheat and say two things? I would say two. I would say one is money, right? Unfortunately, a lot of these tools are extraordinarily expensive. Some of them are extraordinarily inexpensive. The data, you've heard us talk about the data lake. We are doing for pennies things that used to cost us millions of dollars, and it's assisting employees. It's new solutions. It's not replacing anyone. So in that area, it's been wonderful. But generally speaking, I think money will be an issue as we get solutions that are brought before us. And then I think the other barrier to this is just expectations meeting technological capabilities, right? We heard in the previous presentation a lot of the issues associated with AI. You see that particularly in chatbots, right? Because when they go sideways, they can go really sideways. And, you know, you think about somebody that we're serving as a public entity who is in a time of crisis, talking to a chatbot that goes sideways, that's kind of horrifying, right? So I think one of the barriers to AI implementing is AI itself reaching a technology place where we're comfortable with it. I mean, I'm not afraid to to push on that. I think, like I said, a core feature of our agreement is continuous improvement. We are not going to be the last to do stuff, but we don't want to be the first to make a mistake either. And so I think the big barrier/challenge is the technology and balancing that piece. The way we're addressing that is we are working our way into AI in the safer areas and learning how to develop it before we take chances in the more in areas that would have a greater impact that could hurt people.
I saw in your spreadsheet that you had Rover AI on there, and so it begs the question.
You and I love it. Yeah.
How is Rover AI being utilized in my district to improve public services like road maintenance and such to identifying and addressing potholes more effectively?
Yeah.
And this is more of a personal question for my constituents, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent question. It's not been deployed yet. It moved out of the proof of concept phase. Looking at it for expanding it and looking into the procurement possibility, I will be working with the Department of Public Works to see what we need to do to get that solution there and possibly use some other things for it, right? Jerry Rittner's presentation identified trash, right? And that's actually one of the possibilities for Rover AI as well. So I will commit to you to work with DPW on that, and we will get back to you on that.
David, thank you so much for your time. That was outstanding, very informative. And with that, I'd like to wrap up and quickly summarize. I want to thank all the presenters today for sharing their expertise and for those attending here in person and virtually. From what I've heard today, it's clear that AI has enormous potential to make our operations more effective and efficient, which directly impacts the quality of life for over 20,000 workers in our workforce. But there has to be a balance. And we heard today, too, how the best concepts sometimes don't result the best returns. When we support our employees with better tools and processes, they can do their jobs more effectively and efficiently, and that's a win for everybody. But it's clear that the employees have to be part of the solution and that we have to bring our constituents along at the same time. With that, I'd like to thank all the staff that helped put this meeting together. I want to thank everybody again for being here today. And all these meetings are up on the web. You can review them, you can go through the videos. We're not sophisticated enough yet to have a word search in the video, but hopefully David will get us there. Thank you so much, everybody.